We're live,
Yeah.
thank you. So thank you, we had a bit of a recess, now I'd like to move into the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, could you tell us?
I would like to add that we strike up an ad hoc committee to advocate for our Catholic high school in Beaumont, which is our #1 priority in our capital plan.
Okay, that will be added to the action item 6.10. Will be the action item. Thank you. Any other additions? Any deletions? Changes? So I'd like someone to make a motion that they approve the agenda as amended. Someone make that motion. Go ahead, trustee.
I move that the board approve the agenda as amended.
All those in favor? Thank you. Minutes of the meeting. Approval of the minutes. Could someone make a motion for that before we have any discussion?
Chair,
Thank you.
that the board approve the minutes of the regular meeting held March 20th, 2024 as separate.
I believe everyone's had a chance to look at those minutes. Is there any discussion about the minutes or anything? Without any, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that was passed. We'll have a look at the board priorities, the goals and priorities. Just review. Let's keep these in mind. Thank you. Now we'll go down to the executive administrative reports. The chair report 4.1. Looking if there's any questions. Yes, trustee Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there anything you can share with us under the meeting that happened on March 18th?
On March 18th, we had an excellent meeting with ASBP. It was board chairs and superintendents. And they were really looking at, we broke into groups, but we also had a speech first from the Minister of Education. And that was pretty well things you've heard before. But it was very good. The breakout sessions, I was online, so quite a few people were there, the ones online. We were talking about the possible legislation that will be coming into effect. Well, that will be voted on in the legislature in the fall. And whether there may be some changes and, I think the government was listening. So I feel that it was good that way, that I think they're going to be listening, and I'm not sure what the changes or what it will look like in the fall, but we'll wait and see. And we'll move on to the superintendent. Report. Are there any questions for the superintendent? Miller?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So forgive me as I scroll back and forth on my technology here. Under number 2, building effective relationships, bullet number 3 refers to CASA. I'm just wondering how this program is going and how are our students accessing this?
Superintendent Bouchard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask Assistant Superintendent Cardinal to speak to this.
So CASA Classroom is new this year. We are not accessing it currently, they are full, but we will have access next year. This year was essentially a year of development of the CASA Classroom and just setting it up for success. And so, we will have access next year.
Any other questions, Trustee Miller?
Yes, thank you. Under number 4, bullet 2, visionary leadership, talking about the IPP template. I'm just wondering if you could tell me more about this, and is it changing, and how will it help with student success, and are IPP still required to be created in partnership with parents?
Superintendent Bouchard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask Assistant Superintendent Cardinal to speak to this.
So the IPP essentially is created to support student success. So definitely it will continue to do so. It is similar in nature to what we had. However, we had our IPPs in Google Docs previously. That is not as secure as we would like it to be, so this will increase security. It will help with consistency across the division. Also with the filing of the IPPs, we can transfer them from school to school without having, the worry about it being shared to the wrong people, etc. And again, it will continue with the same process with the involvement of parents.
Is there any other questions, Trustee Miller?
Last one, under number 7, bullet 8, scroll too far, talks about the mental health pilot. You provided a verbal update to Alberta Ed. What can you share with us?
Superintendent Bouchard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask Assistant Superintendent Cardinal to speak to this.
Yes, so the Director of Student Services attended the online meeting, and she reported to me that it was a very successful meeting and that the parties involved were very pleased with our pilot. We now have in place a behavior consultant in Anoka, Macomb, and 2 in Drayton Valley, 1 for each school. But that is only until December because that is when the funding ends. And we're not sure if it'll continue, we haven't heard quite yet. They did appreciate our focus on the training of our staff through things like Assist or the CTIP training, etc. They felt that that was good in terms of building capacity in the division. And the person that Chris Piro met with, she gave her some hints about taking the training and putting it into action with some strategies. So it was a very productive flow of a meeting.
Are there any other questions for the superintendent? Not, then we will move on to the Secretary Treasurer's report. Any questions for the Secretary Treasurer? Questions? And we will move on to business items. Oh, sorry, so go ahead.
The transportation, any updates from the home area for that transportation issue?
Secretary Treasurer?
Yeah, please. Okay, thank you. Yes, what we have had is a situation where we actually discussed with the Crane bus lines to provide transportation or busing for that new route. And they have accepted to do so, and we've sent them to sign waiver and negotiate the rates, and which are within the same rates that the other contractors also have. And so we're just waiting for, we actually have the meeting next week just to iron whatever issue, but they are reviewing the contract. But otherwise, the issue is resolved. What we are also doing is to ensure we actually set up a tracking document which actually tracks the number of parents we have actually registered for transportation, and at the same time, signed the declaration forms. So that at least people will be able to access funding for them when they don't have to pay fees.
Very good. So this tracking sheet is new then?
Yeah, it's actually new. We just wanted to know the uptake, and sometimes they may just assume that the transportation will provide, still want them to register, and at the same time also sign.
Good. Well, I'm glad that has been resolved for Macomb. Thank you. Any other questions for the Secretary Treasurer? then we will move on to the business items. Alberta Education Financial Profile, and I think I will turn it over to Secretary Treasurer again.
Thank you. Every year, Alberta Education provides information to the Alberta school divisions in terms of how they have performed in the past. And normally we provide information for 5 years, going back 5 years. And so they provided us information for the 2022-2023 year audited accounts. And they actually group this information into, as I said, all the school divisions in Alberta and also school divisions within our cohort. And our cohort is defined as on the basis of our enrollments. Okay. So some of these parameters are just to check where we are at compared to the other divisions. The first one in Fig 1 really is to look at what is our financial health for our division, the other divisions. And we can actually see that we actually do quite well on average, just as good as the other provincial average provincial divisions. But however, we are lower on our goals specifically. But generally, our target is about 5 days or 2%. In terms of about 2%, but however, our percentage is actually just under 4%, which means we have got enough resources to last over 5 days. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. The next Fig 2 is actually looking at how much surplus we have per student. And we actually demonstrate the board ensuring that the reserves are at appropriate levels. So we actually note that we are just the same as also the provincial average. More or less exactly the same as like the previous ratio. But however, we actually lower on the cohort. What that means is, but you may actually recall, when you also compare with the previous year, we actually see that we are actually down. And the reason why, it is because we had, the board actually made a lot of decisions to move our operating reserves to capital reserves. So we actually see the opposite of that when we look at the issue of the capital reserves. Okay. The next ratio is speaking to the same issues. It's just using the different parameter for comparison. But otherwise, we are in a good state. Okay. I'll actually go to on the capital reserve per student, as I indicated, is just the opposite of what we actually already in the reserves, because the funds were actually moved the capital reserves. So we actually higher compared to last year, and even higher compared to the other divisions. The next ratios, next two ratios, talking about liquidity. This measures the ability of the school division, its ability to meet its financial obligations, and as a general, generally, as a general rule, it should be greater than 1. That is the ratio for the current ratio. And for the working capital, it's the same ratio, but just using different parameters. And we actually note that the school division on these two ratios is that we are actually well above the other school boards, provincial and our cohorts And which means we are really able, we are financially capable to meet our capital requirement, not our capital requirements, our operating requirements. Right, the next ratios look at our investment in our capital assets. One in the buildings and the other one in the equipment and vehicles. In this measure, it really tells us how we have been investing in our long-term needs in terms of our buildings and our equipment. And it also measures how old our buildings is for our assets, our capital assets. So when you look at the buildings, we are above the provincial and the code ratios. Why so? It's not surprising because Start Africa has had a number of schools that are newer, and it's about 5 schools that are new, that are less than 10 years old. So that are about 10 years old, and therefore they would have that ratio is actually reflecting that. And it also means we actually, relatively, we actually have more buildings than everyone in the province, but I think it's a relative measure. So it's really comparing our own situation, but obviously the other schools are also comparing their own situation, but we are in a better situation than that. But when you look at the equipment and vehicles, it's opposite, right? And it's also indicating that our equipment and vehicles are kind of older than kind of older. But one other aspect I can mention is that we know that some of our vehicles that are new right now, they're actually on lease finance, and so generally because of that, our ratio is expected to be lower because of that, because those vehicles that are new are not really recorded as our vehicles. They are not our vehicles. They are the finances, so they are not on.
I didn't realize leasing versus owning. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. So without owning, therefore they don't reflect. So that has an impact, although they are new assets, but they are not, the cost is not reflected. Okay, but otherwise, overall, Chair, is that, our financial situation appears, our financial health situation is very reasonably okay when you compare with other school divisions.
So we're on good, strong financial ground right now.
I would say so.
It's good. Does anyone have any questions? Five out of 11 schools less than 12 years old. That's significant.
Yes.
So that means 6 schools that are quite a bit older. St. Benedict's is, what's the oldest one?
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame
I think.
or Sacred Heart?
No, I think Notre Dame is.
And also when you look at schools that were built last year, because of inflation, the same school size 20 years ago would have been built at 2 million or maybe 5 million, but today it's being built at 40 million. So there's what a significant situation. The other document is really just showing the schools that are within. No, it's just showing you our schools and specifics. And yes, specifics, but otherwise.
It's good to know. Is there any questions then? Secretary Treasurer, Ms. Flynn. And yes, trustee Taylor.
Just keep up good.
Sure, the good work was done.
And let's make it 6 out of 12 schools very soon.
Yeah.
With the high school in Beaumont.
It'll be 13.
Oh, yes, lucky number 13, yes. Great. Well, thank you very much for all this work. There's no other questions. We will move on to municipal tax letter, and I think we've seen this letter quite a few times. So it's about the Toonies for tuition, and it's usually sent to, sorry, did I miss something? Oh, the property tax letter, municipal tax letters, yes. I said Toonies for tuition. Sorry about that. So the property tax letter, and usually it is sent to the parishes to be handed out to parents. And it was interesting, I was at school board meeting last night where one of the parents did say, did you know, she said, that you have to go to the office for Lacombe and just sign something so that your taxes go to a separate school board. She said, I did not know that, and my children have been coming here for years. So then everybody's like, oh, really? Yes, we do send that letter every year, and we mention it at church too, but it was great that then everybody was, oh, we're gonna make sure we tell other parents and so on, so that's good. Any question about this municipal property tax letter, 2024? Yes, trustee Emma.
No, I'll just.
So you would like 50 copies?
I want to give that.
Okay. We'll each be getting a few copies for people that don't have to go with the bulletin, the people that don't have the internet or whatever. Thank you. The next thing is the Toonie, now is the Toonies for tuition for graduating students. So every year, the Canadian Catholic School Trustee Association have the Toonies for Tuition program. And it's a charitable foundation that alleviates the financial burden on Catholic families who live in a province. And considering there's only 3 provinces that have publicly funded Catholic education, there are a lot of provinces that don't. Toonies for Tuition is the official campaign for the CCSTA endowment fund. So every year in May, we ask the trustees to make arrangements with their respective high school administration and speak to the graduating class and encourage them to make a $2 donation towards the Toonies for Tuition fund. So I would ask the trustees that have high schools in their area to make those arrangements to speak to graduating classes. Any discussion on that? But it's an excellent program. We're very fortunate that we're one of the provinces that have publicly funded Catholic education. Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. I was born in Ontario, and that's where I went to Catholic school. So we're all very fortunate. So I'll now go on to the action items, and this is going to be something that Trustee Burke is chair of the policy committee. So Trustee Burke, 6.1, the role of the board chair. Go ahead.
I request that the board give policy 5, role of the board chair, 3rd and final reading as presented, and that the revised policy now be in effect for the division.
Thank you. Is there any discussion as far as the role of the board chair, policy 5? There's no discussion. I will call that question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously, and that is the 3rd and final reading. Thank you. 6.2, policy 7. Trustee Burke, if you would like to present that motion.
That the board give policy 7, board operations, third and final reading as presented, and that the revised policy now be in effect for the division.
Thank you. Any discussion as far as policy 7? No discussion, I will then call the question. All those in favor? It's passed unanimously. Thank you. 6.3, policy 8, committees of the board. Trustee Burke, would you like to make that motion?
That the board give policy 7, appendix B.
Policy 8.
Pardon?
No, you missed.
Oh, sorry.
No, 6.3.
6.3.
Okay, yeah.
Just keep order.
That the board give policy 7, appendix B, trustee honorarium expense schedule, first and final reading as presented, and that the new appendix now be in effect for the division.
Any questions? Call the question. All those in favor? 6.4, policy 8.
That the board, oh, sorry.
Sorry, trustee Burke.
That the board give policy 8, committees of the board, third and final reading as presented, and that the revised policy now be in effect for the division.
Is there any discussion on policy number 8? Trustee Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure exactly how to go about this, so maybe I'll just make some comments first. And then maybe we could possibly amend some things. So under 1.2. Just wait for the screen to come. There we go. The last sentence, all committee chairs will be trustees. Actually, is very repetitive from 1.1 where it says all trustees. Like trustees will be on the committees. So it's kind of repetitive, and I was just wondering if we could. So that's, I'll just go through my list here. So that's kind of one amendment that I would like to make, is just all committee chairs will be trustees. There needs to be some alignment there. And then in 2.2 under power and duties, I know there's been discussion before about no motions, decisions, or straw polls can be entertained. And I understand the intention of this portion in the committee of the whole. However, there are times where we make a decision on some dates of meetings that are not, I guess, in an official capacity, right? Or that sort of thing that doesn't require the official motion. So I'd like to see some, I guess, rewording in this area that there's some alignment that needs to be done in there. And then my last one is under 2.3, the second bullet for membership. Maybe I'm asking for clarification in this area, but to me, it would read superintendents and or designates. There may be times where it could be an and or situation, but maybe I'm incorrect in that.
So when I'm looking at the first one, you were talking about 1.2.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the audit committee. There's trustees on there, but there's also public. So I think this would refer to that all committee chairs must be trustees. Go ahead.
In response to that, then 1.1 doesn't make sense when you're talking about standing committees. It doesn't refer to except under the audit committee, right? So something needs to be aligned there. So we need to add something about the audit committee in there, or we need to remove something.
So number 1.1, each standing committee is to consist of trustees appointed by the board.
Except in whatever number the audit committee is.
But it's not except, there has to be trustees in the audit committee appointed by the board. There has to be trustees in the audit committee. So there wouldn't be an except. Right, so this, I would think that would apply okay to the audit committee. It has to consist of trustees appointed by the board. And all trustees may attend that meeting. That's okay. So in 1.2, all committee chairs will be trustees. So the audit committee has to have trustees appointed and the chair would have to be a trustee. So that's why I don't see a, yes, trustee Adnan, do you see?
So Madam Chair, and in that thought, what can be added on the 1.2 will be all committee chairs of the board will be trustees.
That's what it says here. It's already saying that all committee chairs will be trustees.
Yes, chairs of the board, right?
Chairs of the board, but I'm not sure what you mean. But
All committee chairs, yeah, that's it, yeah. So committees of the board, right, pretty much, they will all be trustees, the chairs, and then
Yeah.
it's.
that's already
Yeah.
stated here.
Yeah, you're right.
Trustee Miller?
Thank you. Yeah, not to cause too much confusion in this area, but 1.1, it's just each standing committee is to consist of trustees. I understand the intention of, previously it was at least one trustee when we're talking about, the audit committee where public has to be on that committee, which is very much appreciated. I think I'm just having issue that it is to consist of trustee full stop, right? That doesn't apply for the audit committee. So something needs to be reworded to accommodate that.
You're
That was
saying it
my
doesn't
question.
apply that it has to be consist of trustees, because the audit committee does have to consist of trustees appointed by the board.
And
And I
maybe it's
think
just
that's
how I'm reading it.
listed further down when you look at audit committee. I'm not sure, so you would like it to say is to consist of trustees appointed by the board and in the case of the audit committee, public members?
Yes.
Could have that.
No,
This is the third and final. So, would like to add that, it would have to go back to policy, I would think. Trustee Miller?
being that this is the third reading, if it were okay with the board to approve third and final reading as amended, if that amendment were to be accepted by the board.
I don't see an issue with that, does anyone else see an issue with that?
We will mention. I just also wanted to say maybe as we make that decision, maybe we will also need to look at 8.3.
Went through.
Yeah.
This is the audit committee.
Yes, but where it also talks about. That's where it also talks about those additions.
Yeah.
So whether we need to put those additions back into the first paragraph, or is it enough? Just having them under 8.3.
Trustee Miller?
So I would like to make a formal amendment. If I may, I was just making some comments previously before. So I would like to amend the motion on the floor. For it to read as amended. And what I would like to amend is by in 1.1, each standing committee is to consist of trustees, except in 8.3.
That sounds fine to me. Is there any objection to that? Okay, did you want to go over, what was the other one that you were looking at before we?
In under 2.2, my comments in that area
Right.
were about motions and decisions. What I would like to do is remove the words or straw polls.
What do you, what that trustee? chair. of the committee.
No, honestly, I don't think that we much of any difference. Because we do have some of those discussions. Because some of the trustees don't have it, right? So it will be very fine, so.
But they are straw polls, so yes, if we take that out, then we could decide on dates and simple things like that.
It's just,
Like no motions or decisions. Put the or between motions or decisions. Take out straw polls. Does anyone else have any issues with doing that? We can make that amendment too, and that would apply to both of these amendments. Was that the only?
And under 2.3, it was just a question, should it be and or? I understand the superintendent is a member of the committee of the whole, but there might be a time where it is a designate instead of a superintendent. I was just wondering if that was a better option, not necessarily a suggestion for amendment, maybe clarification.
Sometimes it's both, but sometimes it is a designate versus. So Superintendent Bouchard, do you see any problem with?
I think and or would be appropriate.
Okay, let's change that to and or. Are you getting all this? Good with that too. Are there any others on there? Do you know? Then we would change the wording, if you want to read the new wording, and adding final reading has amended. Okay, the policy again, the motion again,
For policy 8,
yes.
like the board, the policy 16? No,
Policy
policy,
8.
policy 8, sorry. That the board can hear policy 8, committees of the board.
Yeah, that's right.
Third and final reading. As presented,
Has amended.
oh, sorry,
Change presented to amended.
as amended. And that the as amended, and that the revised policy now be in effect for the division.
Thank you. Any other discussion? That? Then I will call the question. All those in favor? It's passed. Thank you. We'll turn 6.4, policy 16, and turn it over to trustee Burke. Make that motion.
Again,
6.5.
6.1.
6.
That the board give policy 16, excuse me, recruitment and selection of personnel. Second reading as presented.
Any discussion as far as policy 16? Trustee Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking for some clarification in this area, specifically under number 5. My first point of clarification is we are adding vice principals and school-based positions to that title. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Trustee Miller,
Anything?
yes.
When we're talking about principals, did we not have a discussion about trustees not being part of the interview process for those titles? So would it be most appropriate to remove the vice principals and school-based positions to this, or would it be more appropriate to move 5.1 to 5.5 to an AP? This is where I don't know what the best process is. I need clarification because I'm looking at my previous notes and I'm not sure what would be the best area, and maybe it's clarification or maybe it's to table this.
I would ask Superintendent Bouchard about this one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think 5.2, the gray, which was previously passed in the last reading, speaks of trustees no longer being on the panel, so they wouldn't be on the panel for any of those titled positions. I do think in 5.1, however, that it needs to say trustees and representatives of the school and faith community will be invited to provide feedback on the principal profile for the superintendent's consideration. So only on that position will trustees be sought for feedback on that profile. The rest of it, I think, could stand unless you want to remove the whole section. But I do believe the policy speaks to all hiring in the division. So I think it would be best to leave it in, but just to make that one correction.
Any other discussion, trustee Melvin? Yes, trustee Melvin.
So would we not in that case remove vice principals and school-based positions from the title? If trustees are not to be part of the process?
Just speaks to how that those positions will be staffed. So
Would that not be the case?
but then you could, the only thing you would leave in this policy would be senior administration. You delete everything else. Because we've got central office, non-senior admin, we've got and the other positions, so.
Leaving it in, it just gives you a bit of a process, it seems. Any other opinions on this? Trustee Lynn?
I just wish to reiterate my opposition to this change. I think that it is important that we have local trustees as part of the panel for the hiring of principals. I think that provides some local context, and it also allows for us to be a part of that process of a very influential role in the community. So those would be my thoughts in opposition to these changes that are being made.
Trustee Lynn? So perhaps this should go back to the policy committee and to redraft with some of those changes and to discuss it again. Is everyone okay with that? Yes,
Madam Chair, I don't understand what you're asking.
to change some of the things here, because it's the second reading, right? Isn't it the second reading? It's the second reading, and if the changes could be made, it could come back for the second and final reading. Some thoughts. So you're thinking just to make the amendment now?
No, I'm not proposing this would be third reading as well, but unless that's the will of the group, but I'm only thinking that the one change about the principal profile, that's the only change that I have as a suggestion that I've heard, other than trustee Leonard's position that trustees should remain in, but that is being voted on each reading.
Yeah. So let's, does anyone have any opposition to make that amendment? Just profile for the principal position, changing that.
Chair,
Yes,
I'm not opposed to that, so that can go and come back to the third reading. But just again, in suggestion to trustee Leonard, as per policy and everything that we deal with, our only employee, right, is the superintendent. So therefore that even though locally we will support, guide, get the best of the candidates around there. We always have done that, again, by encouraging and putting in some of our information into the profile, right, as we see to guide the principal hiring at the local level. So at that point, again, whatever preference you have at the time, you can again give it to your employee so then that he can include that for consideration. Then ideally get a candidate that may fit, right, some of the issues in your community. So that would be my comments.
So they'll be able to provide feedback on the profile for the principal position. So we can make that one amendment. Everyone's okay with that, and then and ask trustee Burke to read it. Appointment and selection of personnel policy 16 as amended. As amended. You could read it again, trustee Burke.
That the board give policy 16, recruitment and selection of personnel, second reading was amended.
Thank you. Any further discussion on it? Then I will call the question. All those in favor? Here. 6.5, policy 3, appendix A. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, trustee Ned.
Can I have my vote recorded?
Yes. I didn't see that. We'll go to 6.5, policy 3, appendix A, trustees process for dealing with issues.
6.6, we deal 6.6 policy 3.
6.1. 6.6 policy. Yeah. This one. 16 policy 3, 6.6. We're doing 6.6, policy 3, appendix A, trustee process for dealing with issues. Trustee Burke.
That the board repeal policy 3, appendix A, trustee process for dealing with issues.
Any discussion on repealing? Policy 3? Then I will call the question. All those in favor? And it's passed. So now we move to 6.7, policy 3, appendix A, trustee was notified of an issue related to administration. Trustee Burke, you could read that. Did you have your hand up?
No.
I'm sorry.
That the board, sorry.
Go ahead.
That the board give policy 3, appendix A, trustee is notified of an issue related to administration. First and final reading as presented, and that the new appendix now be in effect for the division.
Thank you. Any discussion on these? This is an appendix, so just 3 readings, first and final reading. Any discussion on this one? Then I will call the question. All those in favor? Asked about this last night, so did I miss another thing? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we're we need a break, so we're gonna take a 10-minute break. Be back at 3:10.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. 10 minutes. Sorry.